Good evening, Mr. Hicks, members of the board, Dr. Sanchez, and legal counsel Jager. I have a statement here. If you'll just let me get in this.
Technology.
Yes. In November of 2015, the governing board approved the administration's request to hire a consultant to review and revise our guidelines for students' rights and responsibility. TUSD hired a consultant, Mr. Freeman, to lead this process. Beginning in January of 2016, Mr. Freeman convened 16 different focus groups, which involved constituents throughout our district. There were students, teachers, site and central administrators, parents, community members, and other assorted staff. There were over 200 participants that eventually participated in the focus groups. Throughout the next couple of months after that, Mr. Freeman worked with the working group made up of constituents from the focus groups, and that group size was about 20 members. In April of 2016, Mr. Freeman submitted his code of conduct draft. The administration worked this spring, in the year 2015-2016, to review the document and consult with Mr. Freeman. In the spring and the summer of this past year, we worked directly with the special master and the plaintiffs, as well as the Department of Justice, regarding the details of the code of conduct. The content of the code of conduct that received the most review was the area of physical aggression and the concept of persistent misconduct and safe school protocols. We worked through the summer and most of the fall semester of this school year to address a variety of questions and concerns from the special master, plaintiffs, and the Department of Justice. In December of 2016, we reviewed the code of conduct with a group of about 23 school principals. In January 2017, we met with the original working group that worked with Mr. Freeman to review the draft of the code of conduct. Each of these groups provided some feedback on the code of conduct. The governing board has received periodic updates on the progress made with the code of conduct. The most recent update was delivered earlier this month. We also posted the code of conduct on the website for constituent feedback. Tonight, we would like to provide each of you with an opportunity to ask questions as you review and study this document. And we have the code of conduct up on the screen for your consideration.
Dr. Sanchez.
Yes, sir. At this point in time, as the board has had an opportunity to review the community statements, the administrator statements, the code of conduct, if there are any questions that the board has that they would like us to address, or if there is any direction that the board would like to give tied to the code of conduct, at this point in time, we're available to address any questions with either the process in creating the code of conduct, the input from the different constituencies that inform the code of conduct, including the DOJ, Mendoza's, and the special master, or any recommendations by the governing board at this point in time.
Board members.
Mr. Hicks?
Ms. Grijalva.
Dr. Sanchez, can you address what issues, if any, what would happen if board members at this point opt to change any of the wording in this document? What happens legally and the process that will have to happen?
Dr. Stegman, or I'm sorry, Dr. Sanchez.
Sorry. Yes, sir. I'll ask Mr. Brown if he'll address that as he works very closely with this case.
President Hicks, board members, Dr. Sanchez, counsel. Ms. Grijalva, so there are two options. One is that the district would continue to try to collaborate on the new language. As this is an iterative process, every time there's a new revision, you know, there are various stakeholders who would like to see the new revision, would like to see the new language and comment on it. So it could go back through the entire process of revision and of collaboration with the plaintiffs and special master, with Dr. Morado and the working group, potentially out again for further comment by other stakeholders like we have now online. The other option is that it would just go to court and there would be, you know, potentially protracted litigation over the changes that we make tonight.
Okay, Dr. Stegman, and then Ms. Sedgwick.
Well, this is only an information item. We're not making any changes tonight, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I have several questions, but we can go back and forth if you prefer. So one of the things I have wanted to see in the Code of Conduct for a long time, and this is just maybe my issue, but I think it's others as well, is some explicit acknowledgement of our responsibilities under ARS 15841, the statute allowing teachers to remove disruptive students from the classroom. The judge, as far as I know, has never indicated that he felt that any of his rulings should be overruling statute in any part of this process. And so I think that it's appropriate for us to acknowledge that. And when I was reviewing it, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, I did not see explicit acknowledgement of that in the current document. And I think, is that correct? Or, you know, and how we would implement the requirements of that statute?
Mr. Stegman, as far as our communications with the plaintiffs and with the special master, the USP has explicit limitations on exclusionary discipline. And while there's been some acknowledgement that, you know, removal for a temporary period of time might not be considered exclusionary, the DOJ has put forward the position that any amount of exclusionary time outside of the classroom, any removal from the classroom would be considered exclusionary. So under the USP and under the current Code of Conduct, there are some conditions that have to occur before you can remove a student from a classroom for more than a temporary period of time.
So are you saying, and this, I don't think this is something I've heard before, are you saying that your position is that the USP prevents compliance with that statute?
I'm not saying that that's the district's position, but that is an area of contention, a big area of contention that we've been trying to resolve with the special master and plaintiffs, that as of today isn't resolved. But as far as your specific question, what is the conflict between what the USP requires, the language in the Code of Conduct, and ARS?
Right. Well, as I say, I've never heard the judge make reference to any intractable conflict between the USP and statute. And I have to say I'm a little mystified that after all this time and after this has been an issue for a long time, that we have not in this document again made an effort to explain how we are complying with statute. Or if we really believe it is impossible for us to comply with statute, then to take that novel observation to the court and ask for remedy. So I do have that issue, and then I have more things later.
Ms. Sedgwick.
Sure, thank you. So I actually asked a number of questions by email, and of course I am having issues on every single one of my devices accessing the internet. So, and that one is now out as well. There are a lot of questions, and mine echoed many of the questions that came in from the community. The document lacks specificity. It would be very difficult to use it to protect yourself or to really go after somebody in the school. The time frames are not clear. In some cases, it says that a classroom will do this or a school will do that, but everybody knows that those are nouns, not actors, right? They're objects. And so it seems like there's a lot of issue, and that many people in the community don't feel that they had any input. And so while I understand that the DOJ and the plaintiffs and everybody, that they've gone through this process, I wonder, you know, if we couldn't take control and make sure that as it goes through that process again, that it goes through fairly quickly, at least by the end of the school year. Because if I understand correctly, this is for next year, yeah?
That is correct.
I guess that was one question, many questions that ended with, so we don't actually need this document to be ready until about, I would say July would be nice, or August at the latest.
Ms. Sedgwick, based on past experience, really April or May, and preferably earlier. There's a lot of community outreach that has to occur once there is a final document. There's a lot of training that has to occur. There's budget considerations about being able to staff and implement the processes that are in the document. So as soon as possible is sort of the best I can give you. July would be too late.
Okay, so say we shoot for, we'll do April 1, that would still give us February and March, so about 8 weeks to go through another process to gather the community's feedback?
Yes, Ms. Sedgwick, yes, theoretically. I mean, the issue, though, that I think Ms. Grijalvo is raising is that if it went through a community feedback process and we were, for instance, to make 10 more changes, we would then go back to the plaintiffs for another process there for them to review those new changes. And we can't guarantee how long that would take.
Okay.
Ms. Foster.
And so I reviewed the 29 pages of community comments, 28, and then the supplemental 29 page. And so those are all available for all of us to look at and study under this Code of Conduct review. So I want to thank your efforts to getting and opening up the community's commentary on this. And I did study all of this, and I was able to really divide the public's comments between what is missing and what they would like to see in the document, and then suggestions for implementation and moving forward. And so something that I want to recognize that I heard from our community and their input was the importance for staffing, the support, because I know that a lot of the pushback is with what do we have to give due process, and we have to help kids rather than push them out. And we recognize that we need counseling and social workers and staff to help with that process. That's what's so critical. And so I want to recognize that I too agree with the staff support that's necessary. And then there was suggestions and input to have micro and macro aggression training, as well as for bias training. And I think that we talk a lot about our restorative justice training, but I think there were some other suggestions that I hope this document can open up to those opportunities for our staff. And then just quickly, the two pieces that I saw, and I want to go back to say that this document has been approved and agreed upon by the Fisher plaintiffs, the Mendoza plaintiffs, the Department of Justice, Dr. Holly, our special master. So everybody is in agreement with this. But I did want to highlight if there's an opportunity to add something from the comments, seeing social media, not really having a distinct description for social media bullying, because that is where we're going, where we are and where we're moving towards. And then victims' rights. And so if you could just write those notes down, where does it discuss the victims' rights within this document? I had one more thing and I lost it, but I'll come back if you can come back to me.
Dr. Sanchez and then Dr. Stegman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hicks. And the governing board, we still have the commentary open, so if anybody in the community still would like to make a comment about the Code of Conduct, an idea, suggestion, that is still open. It hasn't been shut down because we're doing this presentation or we're answering these questions tonight, so it's still available.
Dr. Stegman.
So I want to go back to something Ms. Foster just said. Do we have communication from the two plaintiffs groups stating their endorsement of the current proposal? That is news to me.
So just to be clear, the Department of Justice, it's sort of just Ms. Foster and Dr. Stegman. There's sort of, it's very rare that we get an approval, so to speak, from the plaintiffs to say we approve this document. The DOJ has indicated they have no objection to the document. The Mendoza plaintiffs have indicated that they have one clarification that they would like to see in the document, and if that clarification is made, then they also have no objection to the document, and that's just a clarification on whether in-school intervention and in-school suspension is exclusionary or not. And we are proposing, a change to that language in a particular table in the book. So as far as our willingness to make that change that the Mendozas have requested, we feel the Mendozas also have no objection. The Fisher plaintiffs have raised 3 objections, and it sort of goes to Ms. Foster's point that some of it's about implementation, not really the language of the code. And those 3 things, and one of their objections is based on a simple misunderstanding. So besides those communications, it does appear that none of the parties have an objection to the code as written, given those few components.
Okay, Ms. Foster.
Okay, come back.
So the other point that I wanted to bring up from people's comments is it's a very dense document to make sense of. And I just wanted to suggest, if it's possible, our communications department has done a marvelous job in condensing information and in simplifying that message. We've done that when we look at different propositions with our DSEG funding. And if we could ask, or if we could have our communications department help with the communication of the dense language here, so that we can more easily and more quickly have our students and our teachers and our parents understand the document.
Mr. Hicks.
That's agreed, and that is something that as we get through this process, specifically with the special master and the plaintiffs, is the idea of receiving that feedback. To an earlier comment that you made, Ms. Foster, one of the things that Mr. Freeman had recommended was that if this code of conduct was to be adopted, that there needs to obviously to be corresponding training. We need administrators to make sure that they understand this document and understand the intent of the document. And we need to make sure that our teachers are aware of that as well. And in addition to that, we believe that we need more training on classroom management. We believe we need more training on restorative practices, on PBIS strategies. And that if we do those things, then I think it provides a better environment for this code of conduct to be able to be successful.
Thank you.
Dr. Stegman.
So this discipline is one of the several very contentious issues of the USP, has been for several years, along with probably the CRC and the magnet school issues. I guess maybe are the top three. And the DOJ and the plaintiffs, both groups of plaintiffs, have had intense interest in this issue. I appreciate, and I'll second Ms. Foster's comment, the process that did elicit actually quite a bit of community comments, so that was successful in that sense. I have myself yet to digest all of that. We haven't had that long. That's not a complaint, but I still need a little time to work through that. But I would be interested in knowing more about the comments that have and questions that have come forward from the parties. And I wonder if it would be too much to ask for the board to get, as well as the community comments, questions, and communication from the parties and the DOJ. And maybe there's nothing from the DOJ, and if so, then just say there's nothing, but from the parties, the DOJ and the special master over the past 3 months. Would it be possible for us to see that material?
Dr. Sanchez.
Mr. Hicks, Dr. Stegman, yes, that's no problem. I mean, the communication that we have is available for the board, and so we'll compile that information that we have, and we'll submit it to the board.
Thank you. Ms. Sedgwick.
Okay, so I'm not trying to be a pain, but I really, I hear that everybody is in agreement, right? And the commentary is still open because we're having this presentation. I have a hard time understanding how everyone can be in agreement or what purpose the commentary serves if we're being sort of urged to pass this document as it is. And so it doesn't make any sense. Everybody is not really in agreement. We haven't heard from the teachers. We have not heard from the students. Those are the two groups of people who are most primarily affected by this document. And although I understand and agree that the administrators really need to understand this document gives the administrators tremendous power. There has been in this district, I receive, as a board member, right, I receive complaints all the time from teachers feeling as though they have no power. They don't have a voice. And while that does not describe all teachers in the district, it certainly does describe a small percentage of them. That concerns me. I don't want for anyone in the district to be unhappy or to feel powerless or voiceless. So us going through this process, and I really appreciate you being here tonight. I'm not trying to criticize you or attack anyone here, but I do want to point out that it does not make any sense for us to continue to collect commentary about a document that we have no intentions of changing. So I would like to make it clear that I would like to push very much toward making the changes so that we actually do get to a place where we are in agreement, because we need for our teachers and our students in particular, and then our parents, to really come and be a part of this process.
Dr. Sanchez and then Dr. Stegman.
Yes, sir. I'll ask Dr. Morado in a moment to elaborate on what we've done to this point. However, I will point out the reason that this item is on for study tonight, the reason it's on for information is to get a sense of where the board is and whether or not this is an item that needs to be agendized at a future meeting for action, or if it's something that the board is saying, despite the special master and the plaintiffs and the Department of Justice's agreement with the document, the board has a feeling that there needs to be further revision to the document. As administrators, we're not opposed to that. That's why we're bringing it here before the board, and we're seeking the board's insight. We have presented this document to teachers sat on that steering committee. We also have a district teacher advisory committee, and we brought this document before that teacher advisory committee and spent quite a bit of time getting their feedback. One teacher from every campus is on that advisory committee, and they then take the feedback to the campus. We also worked with our, our teachers union, and so we've received quite a bit of commentary. However, the board would like us to receive more commentary and go above and beyond what we've done at this point. We're not opposed to it. So I just want to be very clear with the board that the reason this item isn't on as an action item, but on as an information item, is to understand whether or not the board is comfortable because the plaintiff, special master, and DOJ are comfortable, or if the board is uncomfortable and would like to take additional steps, and if so, then we need to advise the special master, plaintiffs, and DOJ of that there will be an extended, that there may be an extension before this thing's approved, and if it's not approved, then the existing code of conduct, the GSR, stays in place. So I just want to be clear on that, and Dr. Model, you can talk briefly about the steps we've taken on the involvement side.
Correct. And so mainly the steps have been the work of Mr. Freeman working with the focus groups. And the focus groups were multiple, and they included a variety of constituents. We even had focus groups of some students that had been through the process of discipline. And we had focus groups with parents whose students had gone through the process. And so the work with the special master and plaintiffs have been incredibly complex. And it was important for us to come before you tonight and be precise about the language, that it's not necessarily that they're in agreement so much as that they're the objections, that they're no longer raising the objections in the current code of conduct as the draft is there. However, the next step is extremely critical to this process, which means that in the complexity of trying to get this through, we need to come before the governing board and seek your approval of this document. And so that may include, as Dr. Sanchez indicated, the direction that you're giving in terms of go out to the community and seek more input. And we were able to review this with a group of principals, as I indicated. We were able to review it again with the working group. We're certainly amenable to whatever direction the board gives us, but we are at the point in time where it is time for the governing board to begin the consideration of this code of conduct.
If I could ask, I've been pretty quiet. We've never seen Mr. Freeman's version of what he put together, I believe. Is that correct?
I believe you have.
We did see his version first, and then, because it's my understanding he went out, and I know he went out and did the work groups and everyone, which was marvelous, because I went to a couple of them. But I don't recall ever seeing his final project or his final report on this. I was told that you took that report and then the administration was looking at it and tweaking it and making changes. Is that not correct, Dr. Sanchez?
Yes, sir. The narrative in this code is entirely his. And an earlier request by the board to see the raw working document was put in. And to my knowledge, that was submitted through the board office to be disseminated to the board. Okay. But if you look at the narrative, that is very much in the spirit of what he presented. The plaintiffs also asked for his working document as well, so we submitted that to them too.
Okay. Dr. Stegeman and then Ms. Foster.
First, I want to second Ms. Sedgwick's comments about the process. Quite apart from whatever value is in those comments that we got, I think it's discouraging to people to submit comments, and some people obviously took time to do it, and then feel like the main thrust of what we're doing is to go ahead and approve what we have in front of us, which is a little bit of what I've been hearing, to avoid delaying everything. And I think that one of the problems we have with community input is that people feel like they give input and it doesn't really have any impact. And I think we need to modify this style of governance. I take that to be some of the spirit of her remarks. So now that we've received this input, I would like to digest it carefully and make no prejudgment about whether it doesn't indicate some changes. I am a little surprised, and I don't really mean this critically, that we're attempting to do this all in one piece. So the last time the board changed the GSR was more than a year and a half ago, coming up close to 2 years ago, probably a year and 8 months or something like that, which is a long time during a period in which everyone has been aware that there are some big problems there. And it would have made sense, and I think I've said this before, maybe to not try to do this all in one piece, but to address some of the obvious issues and say, okay, these pages that seem contradictory, at least let's get rid of that and fix that and then do it in pieces. And I think part of our difficulty here is that we're trying to do such a huge thing all in one piece and get all the pieces right at once. And I'm still not sure that's really optimal. I do find the document pretty, and this is again seconding Ms. Sedgwick's comment, fairly long and confusing. Now, it's probably a little less long and confusing than what we have now, and I give you credit for that, or give the people who've worked on it. I mean, I do think it's an improvement, but taking the viewpoint of a student, and this is really meant as much as anything for students, to imagine the process of the typical high school student or junior high school student or middle school student trying to understand exactly the implications of this is a stretch. And so I am concerned about the length and complexity of it, while acknowledging that there is some improvement. And the previous GSRR contradicted some of our other policies on discipline. So we've got maybe half a dozen at least other policies that address specific disciplinary issues, which people don't talk about very much, but they sit there as board-adopted policies. And as I say, there are some direct contradictions between those policies and the current GSR, and it looks to me like some of those contradictions remain. And I'm wondering, is part of this process, are we going to clean that up so that the existing policies are either deleted or revised to be compliant with the GSRR or rolled into the GSRR? I mean, we have a basic incoherence problem there with that old book of policies. And so I don't know if that's part of what we're thinking about, and I've probably, at this point, gone on enough and should see.
Dr. Sanchez.
Sir. Mr. Hicks, Dr. Stegman, at this point we can do whatever it is the board would like. We could basically, it'd be unfortunate, but we could tell Mr. Freeman and we could tell the plaintiffs this isn't the direction that the board would like to go. They'd like to take the existing GSRR and they would like to begin addressing the existing GSRR and do a poll of all policies and start there. I mean, we can inform them of whatever is the direction of the board. That's our role. And so as we entered into this code of conduct, as we began this work, the direction of the time was to take a look at the code of conduct and do a comprehensive review. And so that was the direction of the time. If that direction has since changed, we'll communicate to the special master, the plaintiff, and the court whatever it is that the board would like to see. And I have no problem in the next meeting creating an agenda item that would very specifically ask the board's direction with regard to the code of conduct and any revision and or process, including abandoning this work altogether, as I say, which would be unfortunate. But I have no problem putting it before the board and giving the board an opportunity to either maintain the direction as before, refine the direction, or take a totally different direction. We have no problem with that, so I can create that agenda item, and then we can receive board direction at the next board meeting.
Okay, my only concern is the cost of what this is going to do. I don't want to, and from what I've read, the restorative practice is really emphasized in this. And I don't care what some people say. I am a teacher. I've been a teacher for over 30 years. I don't want a teacher to be the counselor or the social worker. So I just want to remind the board and the plaintiffs and the DOJ and everyone else that with this is going to cost some money. We're going to have to rehire some more. I don't want to pass this on the backs of the teachers and expect the teachers to become our counselors and social workers and all that. So I'm just throwing that out. I'm going to ask one more comment, and then we're going to take a break, and we'll move on. Ms. Sedgwick.
I need to point out that right now, currently, with the current GSRR, teachers need PBIS training that they have not received. So the fact that teachers will need to be trained is really just a fact of life for TUSD, for us, certainly. And I also have to point out that, so Superintendent Sanchez, you just said that your original direction was to do a comprehensive review of the discipline policy. As far as I understand, the word comprehensive means very thorough. And it would be a thorough review to examine the policies that are on the books before you go ahead and create a new code. Now, nobody has said, let's abandon this document. And I don't believe that it seems like a threat, like a silly kind of a threat, as though if we insist on fixing it and making something that actually works, that it's just going to take all of this extra time. But it sounds like we definitely have until April 1st was one date. There was April and May. So we'd go for April 1st. That gives us about 8 weeks to take the commentary, the feedback that the community has provided, to review the policies that are on the books, because there's already serious question and confusion about exactly what the policy is in TUSD. And that could be because when we talk about comprehensive reviews, we don't talk about a policy review of all of the policies that are on our book. And so again, I'm sorry I'm getting a little frustrated, but I do want to point out that a comprehensive review would necessitate a review of all of the policies that are on the books, so that our community understands exactly what it is that we're doing, so that they and we all know what the rules are. So we can't have one policy here that says this is the discipline, and then another one over there, and then the Arizona statutes say something else. It's really, really essential that we have one document that we can refer to and call that the official policy. And it's unfortunate that that's not been the case up till this point. But hopefully going forward, that has changed, and now we're going to work with one official policy. And so, yes, I would just like to reiterate that I would like for this to come back as an action item so that we can go ahead and give direction. It probably should have been an action item tonight, because we're just going to waste 2 more weeks given our April or May deadline. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm going to, one more comment from Ms.
Yes,
Foster, and then I'll go to Mr. Yeager.
Again, so on January 26th, I think that was last Thursday, I sent 2 questions. And one was, how was community and staff input incorporated into this document already before it was approved by the parties? And you answered that here, and you've answered that this evening. I don't want to review that. And then I asked, how should we contribute our ideas or advocate for ideas presented from the principals, the working groups, and the community to the document at this point and not stall this important work moving forward? And if you don't mind, I just want to share that, because I did not hear approve, and move forward, approve something that's not a good product. So that's not the message that I heard from you, and I want to reiterate what your answer was here, Mr. Brown, that you said, according to Mr. Freeman, this process has taken up to 2 years or more in other districts, and we are still in year 1. In other words, it's not extraordinary for the developmental process to take this long. from my perspective in addressing the GSRR, for the last few years, it may be more important to get it right or close to right the first time rather than push through a document that will be routinely challenged post-adoption. And so I want to thank you. That's the message I received from you. That's what I'm hearing. And I just want to make sure that that is, we're not pushing anything forward. We want to do this correct. I've asked us, and you shared how comments have been incorporated. I will say again, there's 29 pages of comments. And so, and I studied those, and I wanted to bring ideas that I want to advocate for, which was the social media and the victims' right and the training. And I just want to ask, my question is, how long, when did we begin this project of reviewing this code of conduct for the 17-18 school year?
Well, we began in once Mr. Freeman submitted his draft, and that was in April of 2016. And so we went through the process of working with the special master and plaintiffs. And now that we're substantially through that process, now we come before the governing board. So there's really two schools of thought here. I think that the comment that Mr. Brown made in terms of the timeline, I think is apt, especially if we want to implement this in August of 2017, because we do need the time to train our administrators. We need to get the word out to the community. And then more importantly, in terms of the printing that needs to happen, because each student needs a copy. And also there's translation involved in that. But then on the other side of this is the importance of the work. Right. That I seem to be hearing from the dais that we need to involve the community more. We need to go out and make sure that we're being very transparent in terms of what is in this code of conduct, for people to be able to say, I like this, I don't like that, and then for the board to be able to review it. And if that happens to take more time, that certainly is going to be something that you consider. So from that standpoint, I think then that's the kind of the approach that we took with the special master and plaintiffs. Obviously, there were some time considerations there, but there was also robust dialogue in terms of what was contained in these documents, especially when it came to issues of persistent misconduct that we see in schools. And then the other issue was the safe schools conduct, which encompass the issue of physical aggression on our campuses. And so it's been a good dialogue. It's been very, very involved, and it continues because now we're before you to study this, and then for you to give us some feedback and some direction in terms of what the next steps are. And hence the comments from Mr. Freeman that this may take a little bit longer. But to Sam's comments, I think if we're looking at implementation for next year, then I think the April timeline is prudent.
And if I could just quickly say that I did, if you heard that this dais does not hear the community was involved, I want to say that I do hear that 9 months of your work has been given to this, and that there has been community input. So I wanted to make sure you did hear that from me.
Okay, Mr. Yeager.
President Hicks and board members, I also want to make the note that Dr. Stegman's comments are well taken, but in point of fact, we are not addressing the code of conduct in a vacuum with respect to the other policies that Ms. Sedgwick also noted. We already have direction from the superintendent to revise a good number of our policies, and we've got to have a starting place, though. The code of conduct is the core disciplinary and code conduct related policy document for students, and that will be our starting point. We will have to bring a number of policies into compliance with this document once it is ultimately approved by the board in whatever form that might take.
Okay, and those
that
policies,
is on the table.
Okay, and those policies will go through the policy process.
That is correct.
Which means it'll go through the student councils or the site councils, SCPC, the superintendent's leadership council. So
that's correct.
Everybody. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. 10 minutes, 10 o'clock curfew. So we have a few more items.